Hello, and welcome to Autism Society of Greater Phoenix Safety 101. My name is Kristen Puma, and I will be doing our presentation today. The Autism Society of Greater Phoenix is the oldest autism organization in our state of Arizona. We are families for families. We appreciate you attending. Today, we will be discussing safety for all families and all ages across all environments. This has been designed by families for families just like you. Before we even get started, know that some of the information in the presentation might seem obvious to you, but we only know what we know. So our goal is to not make assumptions about what you know, and to be as thorough as possible throughout this class. I want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, the Arizona Coyotes Foundation. This class and recording was made possible through them. We are so grateful for their support for each of our 101 classes. Thank you, Arizona Coyotes, for your continued support of the Autism Society of Greater Phoenix. Let's go, Yotes. We're going to jump right in and talk about general home safety. The first thing I recommend doing is to add Poison Control Center to your phone. Make sure that it is easily accessible for everybody in your family to access. The phone number is going to be 1-800-222-1222. It's important to have this phone number for the just in case. We want to be prepared. I also recommend that you learn CPR if you have not already done so. Be sure to include infant CPR as well if you have an infant in your home. We want to make sure that we're locking up all hazardous materials. When we talk about hazardous materials, we are not just talking about cleaning supplies or auto fluids that might be in your garage. We also want to talk about things like what type of spices you have in your cabinets that could be hazardous if overly indulged, or the types of plants in your home if they're poisonous if eaten. We want to look at using locks and alarms on all exit and entry points. This includes any type of window and door, as well as think about those pet doors to make sure that they are safely secured. Alarms are a great option as they will immediately alert to you if the door is open. We want to also consider what type of choking and suffocation hazards we have around our home. These can be obvious things, or they can be some not so obvious, such as fidget toys that could be easily dismantled and have ball bearings inside of them, or things like water beads, which can be very hazardous if swallowed. We want to make sure that we're considering where our safety gates are being located within our homes and how they are mounted. We highly encourage all safety gates to be hardware mounted and not pressure mounted. We want to make sure that we are putting the gates at places where if they are climbed, that the child would still be safe if they fell over it. Be aware of any falling hazard in climbable areas within your home. Falling hazards such as things like a TV not being mounted to the wall and on a countertop instead. It could be easily knocked over. Climbing things could be like climbing a bookshelf or a dresser. And so we want to make sure that we are always securing those to our wall using a hardware mount. We also want to consider things like, can a couch be climbed onto to reach a window and access that point? Or if is it accessible to a half wall within our home where if they climb up it, they could tumble over. So we just want to be sure and aware of what type of things are in our home and where placement of those items are. We want to also look at securing outlets, appliances, and cabinets. We can use outlet covers to secure outlets. There's many different types. For appliances, we want to consider, do we need to use knob covers to make sure that our children don't accidentally turn on an appliance such as a stove or maybe a washer or dryer. We want to look at cabinet locks and secure them as necessary. There's many different types of cabinet locks out there. You want to just make sure you're finding the one that will be best suited for your family. With looking at home fire safety, the first thing we really want to make sure that we're doing is to be sure that all smoke and carbon monoxide alarms are installed properly in our home and that we are regularly maintaining them. We want to make sure that we are checking them monthly by pushing the little button as seen in the picture on a regular basis, so on a monthly basis, as well as changing the batteries yearly. We want to make sure that we're placing fire extinguishers in key locations in the home. This will include places like your garage and kitchen. We want to make sure that we're limiting access to fireplaces and to the tools required for such. This can also include propane fireplaces or even space heaters, as said in the next line of securing any space heaters. We just want to make sure that our children are not having access to those big spaces and harmful tools. We want to make sure that we're keeping lighters and matches out of reach and potentially not having them in our home, depending on the capabilities of your child or what you feel is safe for your family. We personally do not keep any candles in our home, as they can be a huge hazard for our family. As we look at home fire safety planning, some of the key things that can be helpful in developing a plan is to use things like social stories. A couple of suggested ideas for social stories is going to be talking about smoke detectors, fire drills, fire alarms, and touching fire. When you look at social stories, you want to talk about the how, the why, and the what we do with them. We also want to talk about what type of feelings you might have when these things occur or when we're looking at them. We want to help a child to understand all the components of each of those things. There's probably other ideas out there as well, but these are some of the key areas to look at with fire safety planning. We also want to make sure that we're creating an emergency escape plan. We want to make sure that everybody in the home is aware of the plan. We want to make sure that we're practicing our plan often. If your child's old enough, it might be helpful to have them included in the planning of that plan and alter it as you decide that might not work. We want to teach our children the idea of getting low and go. I know back in the day we used to teach stop, drop, and roll, but really we want our children to move out of the space. So we want to get them as low to the ground as possible, as that is where the clean air is going to be. And we want to teach them to go. If they're disoriented in a room, we also want to teach them to keep a hand on a wall and not remove it. This will help them to circle around the room until they enter or find an established doorway. We want to assign one person to be responsible for the autistic individual in our home. And we want to make sure that everybody is aware of who that assigned person is. And sometimes that assigned person might change depending on who is in the home at any given time. We want to make sure that we talk through and teach all those scenarios. Another key factor is visiting a local fire department. This will give you the opportunity to inform the department of your child's needs, as well as giving your child an opportunity to see the station, meet the firefighters, and see the equipment that might be used. Kitchen and cooking safety. We always want to make sure that we're supervising our children in kitchen areas. We want to make sure that we're keeping sharp knives out of easy access, and that we're using back burners on a stove and turning those handles away from the front when cooking. We want to teach our children to never run or rough play in the kitchen. We also want to make sure that if our child is of high chair using age, that they are securely strapped to a secured high chair. Tablecloths can be dangerous. Just know that if a child reaches up and grabs that cloth and pulls, everything that's on that table can come tumbling down on top of them. You have to determine if using tablecloths is the right decision for your family. We also want to just discourage standing on chairs. We want to make sure that we're teaching them what is proper to stand on, such as a stool or stepladder, as opposed to using a chair. Teaching cooking safety. We always want to ask for adult help when handling knives. As we teach our children how to use knives, it's okay for them to use them themselves, but we want to make sure that they are being supervised and taught how to use them first. We want to make sure that we're asking adults for help when using the stove or oven or other appliances, especially as we're learning to use those appliances. We want to make sure that we are teaching our children proper hand washing before handling any food, as well as food sanitation rules. There's a lot of great resources out there for finding these lists of common rules and even pictures to help go along with them. We want to make sure that we're always putting away items after use, and this is going to help to keep us have a clean space and that we want to clean as we go. Lastly, we always want to assume that anything in the kitchen that's been cooked on or taken out of the oven is hot, and we want to use pot holders. This is just something that we always want to assume, because if we don't, we might end up with burns on our hands. Safety around pets and animals. We want to make sure that we're teaching our children to be calm and gentle when around any animal. We want to make sure that we're giving any animal a safe space. So if in your home you have a pet, you want to make sure that you make and designate an area that is safe for that pet. It might be a kennel or it could be a fenced off area of your home, but we want to make sure that we're giving any animal a safe environment where they can seclude themselves and be removed from any stressful situations that they might encounter. This is going to help protect both the animal and the child. We want to make sure that we're not table feeding our pets or having food around them, as many animals can become food aggressive. Even if they don't typically are, there's opportunity for them to become such. We want to make sure that we're always asking before touching an unfamiliar pet or animal. And this is when we enter other people's homes or in public spaces. We always want to ask, and we never want to run up and approach another animal. We also don't want to be distracting to anybody's service animals. So we want to make sure that we're not engaging with them. We want to make sure that we're not approaching pets that are eating, sleeping, or drinking. Again, by giving a pet a safe space to seclude to, we can also utilize those spaces to do things such as feeding them and allowing their water bottles to be in place. We also want to make sure that we're encouraging our children to never take a toy away from an animal. If you have a pet, you want to teach your pet to drop the toy if they're playing fetch or another game with it. We never want to pull it out of a dog's mouth or any animal's mouth. We also want to just remember that animals are animals with animal instincts. So while an animal may be trained, at the end of the day, they are still an animal. And when they are stressed or have anxiety, that they can act in erratic behaviors and might have some uncommon behaviors that you're not used to seeing and can become aggressive. Water safety. Drowning is among the leading cause of deaths in individuals with autism. 32% of parents have reported a close call with a possible drowning. Children with autism spectrum disorder are 60 times more likely to experience non-fatal and fatal drownings than their neurotypical peers. The key of this is that we really just want to make sure we're watching our children around any body of water. Water in our home, we want to make sure that we're never leaving a child alone in a bathtub. Never, not even for one moment. It takes only seconds for a child to drown. So just turning our backs or being distracted by a phone call could lead to our child drowning. We want to make sure that we're emptying any large containers of waters. Those are both water containers of water that we have within our home or even outside that might have accumulated rainwater or been filled up by your child even. We want to make sure that we're keeping bathroom doors shut, and this will just help to discourage the play in the water and keeping your child from filling a tub by themselves. We want to make sure that we're keeping those toilet seats down and secure as well. Again, our children can be very drawn to water, and it is possible to drown in a toilet. We also want to make sure that we are keeping our hot water below 120 degrees. This is the point of scalding. You are able to adjust this on your water heater, and sometimes in Arizona, we might need to adjust that temperature a couple times a year. When we look at pool and drowning prevention, pool safety and drowning prevention, we want to make sure that we are always assigning someone to supervise our child around the pool or our children at the pool. One of the ways to do this is to get a water watcher card or a lanyard. And it's just a card that says water watcher. And that person wears it knowing that they are the person assigned to supervise the pool and watch the pool. If they want to take a leave or go to the bathroom or get water or drink, then they need to give that water watcher card to somebody else so that we know that there's always somebody monitoring the pool. Key factors are going to be keeping a fence around your pool, making sure that you're using a pool cover or net. We want to make sure that we're recognizing that a back door is not necessarily an effective fence. So we always want to use a standalone fence around our pool for an extra barrier of safety. We also want to invest in a pool alarm or tracker. And this is something that you place inside the water and it will alert you anytime something gets into the water and there's ripples felt in the pool. Nothing can replace teaching your child to swim. Whether you have a pool or not, or even if your child is scared of water, it is important, it is vital to teach your child to swim. Accidents happen, and it's important for your child to know survival swim safety. They need to know how to get out of a body of water on their own by getting onto their back and just floating or shimmying to the edge of the water and how to climb out. We want to make sure that we are teaching our children that key safety factor. We want to make sure that we're discouraging any rough play around or near the pool. And we want to make sure that we're keeping our water clear and clean. If we can't see the bottom of the pool, how are we going to see somebody in that pool? We also want to connect with our neighbors. Your neighbor might have a pool, and it's important to let them know that your child is drawn to water and how they can help to keep their pool safe and their home safe for your child. We want to make sure that we are engaging with them if possible. So, what type of bathing suit should your child be wearing in the water? Alive Solutions has come up with this diagram, and it is a very useful tool to really be able to see what type of colors are most effective to being seen when submerged in water and in different types of bodies of water. Um, they have come to say that if they had to pick an overall winner, it would most likely go to neon orange. Neon orange is able to be seen in most types of water at different depths. So when we think about what our children should be wearing to a pool or any body of water, we want to remember to think bright and contrasting. We also need to remember that visibility is so much better at the surface of the water, and that water is going to hide with small amounts of surface disturbance. So a calm body of water will be easily to be seen through, but as soon as ripples start to happen, it's going to be harder to see. But ultimately, remember that whatever color you are wearing will not matter if someone is not watching. Something else to be aware of is something called dry drowning. So, when should you see a doctor if your child has experienced a near drowning event? So, if your child is fatigued, it's not necessary to see a doctor, as it can be normal for a child to be tired after swimming. If there was no near drowning incident, the child might just simply be worn out. If your child is vomiting, again, it's not necessary to see a doctor, as the vomit just might have been that they had swallowed a bunch of water while swimming. However, if your child has a persistent cough that is present following a near drowning event, you should take your child to see a doctor. If your child has fast breathing, we also want to make sure that we are taking our child to see a doctor after a near drowning event. We want to make sure that we are watching them, as these things can develop either immediately or even several hours later. So if your child has had a near drowning event, make sure that you're monitoring them and watching their breathing as well as monitoring their coughing. Teens and young adult water safety. One thing that we need to remember with teens is that they tend to overestimate their abilities and underestimate risk. So we want to make sure that we are allowing them to be in a safe, supervised environments, knowing that they're going to think that they can do things that maybe they can't, and they're not always going to be aware of the risk of the activity that they're doing. Some of the things that we need to teach our teens and young adults in regards to water safety is to never dive in a shallow pool or an above ground pool. We only want to dive in a diving pool. We want to teach them to never swim alone, that they should always have a buddy or somebody watching. We want to make sure that we are teaching them to never push or to jump on another person. We want to make sure that they are taught to be aware of their surroundings and to look before they jump. We want to make sure that we're teaching them to not rough play in the pool, that we never want to pull our friends underwater. We want to make sure that we're teaching them to stay sober around water. Again, by having alcohol involved, it can skew our judgment and cause for disasters to occur. We want to make sure that we're teaching them to not swim during electrical storms. So if they're seeing that lightning flashing in the sky, we want to get out of the water. And we also want to teach the importance of life jackets when boating. And this isn't necessarily because your child doesn't have the capability of swimming, or maybe they are an expert swimmer. But this is more about visibility while in a body of water with boats. It's important so that other people can see the individual, but also so other people can see that individual as well. Life jackets are one of the key ways to make sure that the individual is highly visible in an open body of water. Car safety. We want to make sure that we never modify or create our own car seats. There are regulations for car seat manufacturers to be followed, and so we never want to impede them, and we definitely do not want to try and create our own. We want to make sure that we're in the car, we are using child safety locks. We want to make sure that we're considering the use of a seatbelt cover that is going to help identify your child's needs. This is just something that usually Velcros over the safety belt of your child, and it can say things like autistic, nonverbal. This gives a first responder notice of the needs of your child and what type of things to look at when helping rescue your child from that car. Using a seatbelt guard is going to help to cover where the seatbelt clicks into place so that your child doesn't unbuckle themselves. We want to make sure that we are using seats as recommended by the manufacturer. So we want to make sure that we are not turning our children around forward facing before recommended by the manufacturer of the car seat. We also want to make sure that we are not exceeding the limits of the car seat as posted by the manufacturer. So if your child is 40 pounds and your seat is only rated to 35 pounds, we want to upgrade that seat to one that is appropriate for your child. There are specialized adaptive car seats available. A couple of them are Rider Safe Travel Vest and the Easy On Vest. There's also options to be able to access getting an adaptive car seat through things like your DDD and Altex. This gives emergency planning and resources. So a couple of the Arizona specific resources that we can find are things like the Arizona Emergency Information Network and the Arizona Department of Health Services. Both of these websites have vital information that can be useful for your family. They have some different safety planning. They have one specifically for families with disabilities as well. I would take an opportunity to show those around and explore them to really see what those sites have and what might be helpful for your family. Another planning resource can be by getting some safety kits. McGruff Safety Kit and Big Red Safety Box are two free resources for families to utilize. The Big Red Safety Box is pictured here, and it comes with a lot of really useful things for your family to utilize in planning for emergencies. We also want to make sure that we're teaching safety to our kids. A couple of unique resources are things like the Kid Power books, which are comic books about emergencies, as well as on Autism Speaks website, they have a ton of resources for teaching safety to our children. Another awesome tool and resource to be utilized while looking at planning for emergencies is to utilize our individual support plan that we have with our DDD and Altex plan. So when we're looking at creating our plan, when we sit down with our DDD support coordinator and creating our individual support plan, we want to think about safety goals. We want to think about how we can utilize them to help us achieve our safety goals. So looking at how to utilize safety goals when looking at our therapy options, things like incorporating safety into our OT or our speech or our physical therapy or whatever other types of therapies you might be utilizing, such as behavioral therapy. We want to look at safety goals and how we can utilize them maybe during our habilitation hours. So we want to make sure that we're using the supports that we have to help us create a good plan and enact that plan. DDD is very huge on safety. They will typically add hours if they know that you are looking to achieve safety goals. So utilize that as a resource. Secondly, if your child is in a group home, we want to make sure that we have an emergency disaster plan as part of that individual support plan as well. When we look at a group home, we want to make sure that all the staff is aware of the plan. We want to make sure that your child is aware of the plan. We want to make sure that individuals are aware of the plan. We want to make sure that somebody is in charge of your child if something happens. They might have a plan in place in a binder on a shelf, but it's no use if nobody has looked at that plan, taught that plan, and has practiced that plan. So we want to make sure that we are encouraging the group home to do those things and follow up to make sure that they have been done and that they are done on a regular basis. Teaching safety to teens and young adults. There's a great book out there called The Gift of Fear by Gavin DeBecker. It has some really awesome key points. Some of them are things like making sure that we are our child's safe person to call. So an example of that is if your child needs to leave, give them the excuse. Make yourself be the excuse that you're coming to pick them up. With that, you can also create a code word for them for when they need a way out. So if they're calling because they're uncomfortable and they say, "Hey, mom, can you pick up some popcorn for me for tomorrow?" You know that popcorn really means, "Hey, come pick me up." But it gives them the opportunity to ask without anybody else overhearing or knowing that that is what they're asking. It also gives you an opportunity to say, "Yeah, sure, I'll be there. We have an emergency." Go ahead and tell them that I'm going to be on their way. Gives them the opportunity to leave without being uncool, and you are the reason for having to leave early. We want to teach our kids to hang out with good people. So we need to also scale and teach our children how to understand who is a good person. We want to make sure that we are helping them to understand what makes a person a good friend versus a not good friend. We want to teach and encourage our children to always go out with a friend, to never go places alone. It's always better to have somebody else with you and to go in groups. There is safety in numbers. We want to teach our children to always leave with a charged phone, a fully charged phone. We don't want them to be in a situation where they don't have any power on their phone to be able to give you a call. It might also be helpful if you give your child a portable power pack as well to just keep in their backpack or in their purse. Encourage them to charge it regularly so that it doesn't have no power when they need it as well. But we want to make sure that we are encouraging our children to keep that phone charged. We want to teach our children to know their surroundings, to stay in well-lit areas, to be situationally aware, and to take in the things around them. We want to make sure that we are encouraging our children to tell someone where they are going and an expected time back. It's important if your child likes to go on hikes or walks or even just going out with a friend. Something can happen, and we want to just make sure we know what their timeline is and it is for their safety. We also want to make sure that we are teaching our children that no is an acceptable answer, that no isn't a complete sentence, and that they are allowed to say it. One of the things in our demographic is that our children are taught compliance, and so they're not frequently taught that no is an acceptable answer. So we need to really go back and revisit that no is acceptable, that they are allowed to tell somebody no, that they don't have to give a reason for it. So looking at school emergency preparedness plans, we want to make sure, just like when we talked about the group home preparedness plan, that our schools also have an emergency preparedness plan in regards to our specific child. This is a great safety checklist put out there by the Mighty that goes over some key things to think about or talk to the school about when creating an emergency preparedness plan. So things like, does the plan accommodate the student's physical needs? How is the student going to get down the stairs and out of the building safely? So if your child has any physical needs, these are things that need to be addressed and discussed and talked about. Does your child have any medication that they need to take? Will the medication be with them or in all of their classrooms, or are they going to have to go to a nurse to get it? What is the access? What is the plan? And what is the medication that is needed? And is it something that they can administer themselves? We want to talk about, does the child have an aide or staff member that has been assigned to help the student to evacuate safely? Do they need that? Who is that person? What happens if that person's absent? Who's taking their place? Do several people know the plan? We want to make sure that we are discussing this so that our child is not forgotten about and left behind. We want to talk about, is the student's aide aware of the plan? So again, if they have somebody that's assigned, has the plan been practiced with the aide and any other educators that work with your student? We want to make sure that everybody knows the plan and that it is fully out there and aware and practiced. Does the student understand the plan? So again, not just the aide, but is the student aware of the plan? Making sure that they know what they need to do to be prepared for any emergency, and that you want to make sure that the child knows, hey, this person's going to take care of me. I don't need to panic. We need to make sure that we are aware of any sensory needs of the student, and are they accounted for? What is the plan in place to prevent sensory overload during an actual emergency? What type of steps can we take to help keep our child calm? Can the student communicate effectively and verbally? And if not, what measures need to be taken so that they can communicate effectively? And lastly, does the student need emotional or behavioral supports to cope during a crisis? How can educators assure that they have the tools they need on hand during an emergency? And one of the things that we also need to talk about is if your child, for example, has been excluded or excused from participating in drills because of sensory overload, because of disabilities, because of mobility struggles, because of a whole array of complication factors. What steps are being taken as part of your child's plan to be able to help integrate them to being able to participate? What type of steps are we taking so that we are able to make sure that our child is able to be supported appropriately when the actual emergency happens? And some of those things are learned by doing drills. So if our child is not able to participate in drills, we need to make sure that we have a plan in place to start integrating our child to be able to participate. Bullying. 65% of parents have reported bullying of their child with autism. 47% of parents have reported their autistic child being hit by peers. And 12% of parents have reported that their autistic child has never been invited to a birthday party. There are some great resources out there in regards to bullying. These steps have been taken from Autism Speaks on their take stand against bullying. The first thing is that you want to start a conversation and talk about bullying. You want to make sure that you are talking to your child about what bullying is, how to recognize it, and what to do. So we want to make sure that we are listening, that we believe, that we are supportive, that we're patient, that we provide information to our child, and that we explore options for intervention strategies. While bullying is never acceptable, we can't prevent it from happening. So we have to make sure that we are being as proactive about anti-bullying as we can be, that we're using the IEP as a direct opportunity to proactively prevent bullying. We want to get our school to teach tolerance. So that means maybe having an assembly about disabilities and differences, talking about kindness, going in and reading a story. And it starts at a young age. So we want to do this from the youngest years of our children all the way up and through. We want to encourage self advocacy for our children. We want to encourage them to know about their disabilities and how to advocate for themselves. We want to know what rights we have if these incidents of bullying occur and how to handle them. And lastly, we want to speak up and report bullying. We never want to minimize bullying, any sort of bullying that has occurred. We want to make sure that we're having a conversation about it. We want to make sure that we are making those aware that need to know, and that we are talking about it and reporting it, because we want to make sure that we are holding others accountable just as much as our child is accountable too. Programs for combating bullying. These are a couple of programs that are out there that are great for teaching our individual about combating bullying. Wandering and elopement. 48% of children with autism attempt to elope from a safe environment. One of the things that we need to do is to create an information file and a plan. And we want to make sure that we have this always accessible. There are some great resources out there. I've shared one here on this slide of an example of this emergency information file. This is something that you could just save in your phone even, but you want to make sure that you're keeping it updated and current. Elopement safety tips. So we want to be sure that we are registering our child and address with the local police department if available. This is going to be a premise notice for first responders, so it will give an alert for your address if your address comes up in their system for an emergency response. We encourage you to visit your local police department, just like with the fire departments. The more we get to experience and communicate with our police department and meet and integrate, the better it's going to be for our children. It's going to help them to become aware of you and our children to be aware of them. You want to make sure that you are securing all exit and entry points with locks and alarms and bells, as we talked about previously. This is going to be the #1 factor of keeping your child from eloping from your home. We want to look into maybe using locating devices such as Life 360 or Angel Sense. There's some different resources out there that are locating devices to be able to track our children. You can also look into using a medical alert bracelet. Again, it's just a simple way to have your child easily identified. You can have them as bracelets. There are ones that you can have sewn into your child's clothing. We want to talk to our neighbors if your child is prone to elopement, to let them know, hey, if you ever see my child out alone, please contact me. Just let them know. Again, this is only if it's safe for you to do so with your neighbors. And when we're out and about, we might want to think about using bright and identifiable clothing when in large public venues, or even if your child's going on a field trip with school, put them in that bright orange shirt, that bright neon colors, something that isn't commonly worn. If your child goes missing, you want to call 911 immediately. Do not start looking until you have alerted the authorities. Ask police to enter your child into what is called the NCIC. One of the biggest feedbacks we've gotten is that those wasted minutes, a parent might be looking for that child and not being on the phone with 911. You can be looking while you are calling, but you do not want to hesitate in calling. If you find your child, they are going to be elated and they are not going to be worried that you called them. Get ready to share your child's information. So have that key information ready that we talked about before. You want to look in your immediate area, search where the child was last seen. If in a store when the child was last seen, alert a store manager. Many stores have a code ATOM protocol, which is for a missing person. Make sure that yourself is available. So you want to make sure that you are keeping yourself available, that you have access to a phone, that you're not going somewhere where you can't be reached. The Office of Juvenile and Delinquency Prevention advises guardians to focus energy on gathering and providing information to investigators. Inform and enlist the help of the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children by calling 1-800-THE-LOST. This is a national resource, again, something to utilize if your child has gone missing. These are some great infographics in regards to a child being lost. Another resource is utilizing Silver Alert. This in Arizona now includes children and adults with developmental disabilities. The Silver Alert is a public notification system to broadcast information about missing persons to aid in them being found. Silver Alert uses a wide array of media outlets, road signs, and reverse 911 to broadcast information about missing persons. This is just another level of help, another way to get the community involved to help locate your child. Local law enforcement agency has to be the one to request a Silver Alert from DPS. DPS is the one that issues them. You cannot contact DPS directly for a Silver Alert. Do not tell law enforcement that your child is high functioning. We want to make sure that we are focusing on that they are autistic and that they are missing. So the Community Emergency Notification System, or SENS, is a rapid notification system used to alert the affected area of emergency through the telephone. It's basically a reverse 911. So potential local alerts can include things like major fires, public safety threats, flash floods, hazardous materials, and as we just talked about, missing children or missing individuals. So landlines are automatically added to this system, but you can register your cell phone or voice over the internet protocol or by going to 911alertsyou.com. So again, this is just a way for you to be alerted as to emergency situations in your local surroundings. Law enforcement safety. You want to contact your local law enforcement agency to add premise information. We previously discussed that this will give information about your home and who's in your home to law enforcement before arriving on scene. You want to possibly develop a handout card to disclose your or your loved one's disability. This should be something that's easily copied and easily laminated. Make it replaceable so it can be given to an officer on a scene. You want to carry several at a time, and it can be as generic as you'd like or as specific as you'd like. There is an example of a card on this slide, and it can be downloaded on our website. You want to plan and practice encounters with law enforcement. Contact them. Create spaces where your child can learn. You want to visit your local law enforcement station and do so often. Again, you want to make those relationships and build communication with your local law enforcement. You can even request a home visit from your local law enforcement agency so that they can do a mock call at your home and see your child in a home setting, possibly a space that is safer to them. You want to use community events where law enforcement are in attendance. You can also participate in things like coffee with a cop or pizza with the police. You can use social stories to discuss emergency situations and police interactions. These are all different ways to help build those bridges and help your child feel safe with law enforcement. We offer a program called Be Safe Interactive Screenings here with the Autism Society of Greater Phoenix. This program is to help build those bridges. It's to bring officers and the disability community together. Our program goals are going to be to improve outcomes, promote mutual understanding, and to form relationships. 7 key safety skills of our Be Safe Interactive Screening. The first one is going to be that we teach to follow the law to be safe. We teach that the laws are there to keep us safe. We teach to stay where you are when you meet the police. We teach to keep your hands to yourself when you meet the police and to never touch them. We also teach that when the police tell you to do something, to just do it. We teach about self-advocacy and to tell the police about your disability. We also teach to remain silent if arrested and to ask for a lawyer. And lastly, we go over that we want to make sure we are telling the police where we are when we call 911. If this is a program that you feel would be good for your community, please reach out to us as we plan these events all across the state of Arizona. Online safety. Young people with autism are at a higher risk for compulsive internet use, exposure to inappropriate materials online, victimization by online predators, cyberbullying, sleep disturbances, sex trafficking, and child pornography. These are all things that we just want to be aware of and know that our children are at risk for them. So what is our role as a parent in online safety? Some of the things that we can do to take control of this is to manage the privacy settings and to block inappropriate material. We want to make sure that we're friends with our child on all social media platforms. We want to remember that the internet never forgets and that we want to teach our kids to protect their reputation even online. We want to make sure that we're teaching them to never meet someone online in person, especially if we do that alone. We want to teach our child how to identify and handle cyberbullying. We need to teach to never share any personal or private information online because this can lead to identity theft. It also makes us at risk to be a victim. We need to know that everything done online is traceable. And we really need to have discussions about pornography, sexting, and online predators. A couple of recommended readings that we have in regards to our role of online safety are going to be Online Safety for Teens and Adults with ASD Manual, which is put out by SARC, and then the book called Slaying Digital Dragons by Alex J. Packer. Scams. Scams can come in all different methods and forms. The most common one are phone calls, online, email, and text messaging. You want to be aware and have red flags if they're asking for things like credit card information, wire transfers, debit card numbers, bank account information, and usage of gift cards. We always want to be skeptical. We want to make sure that we're doing business locally with people that we can meet in person. We want to stick with well-known companies. We want to verify people and companies before working with them. Always ask for a callback number. If it is a scam, they will be hesitant to give you a callback number. But if it is a professional business, they will gladly give you a callback number so that you can reach back to them. Do not give out personal information on the phone or online unless you have vetted the company or person first. Fake government scams. This is something that has become more common and frequent in today's society, so we need to be aware of them. The two big ones are going to be Social Security scams and the IRS scam, so Internal Revenue Service. Both of them will rarely call you. Most of the time, they will communicate with you through mail. Neither of them are going to ask for payment over the phone. With the Social Security, remember that you never want to give out your Social Security number. That is personal to you, and Social Security will not shut down your account if it has been compromised. With the IRS, they're never going to ask for personal financial information, especially over the phone, and they're never going to ask for things like PINs, passwords, or credit card numbers. Romance scams. So some of the things that we want to talk about is that we want to focus on what we can do. So we only want to stick with what our abilities are and what we feel comfortable doing. So stick with that. We want to meet people locally. We want to get offline and we want to get out. You can also do a reverse Google search of images to find out if they were taken offline by a scammer. You want to insist on FaceTime, Zoom, or meeting in person. There is zero excuses why somebody can't do one of those things. Never send money and never accept money. Fake online shopping scams. So what does that look like? So some of it can look like fake storefronts online. They can impersonate well-known companies, but they might have a different domain name than normal. You will see things like unbelievably low prices, limited time sales, and this link only deals. Those are all red flags. So lastly, here are 7 easy ways to support the Autism Society of Greater Phoenix. We are a nonprofit organization. We are a 501c3, and we do qualify for the charitable organization tax credit. You can see all of this on our website at phxautism.org. You can hit the donate button at the top and then choose how you'd like to donate. Another way you can support us is by shopping at Fry's food stores and taking part in their community rewards program. Once you've selected us as your organization to support, a small contribution is then given to us each time you shop. You can also volunteer with us. You can do this by going onto our website and clicking on the Get Involved tab. From there, there is a very easy form to fill out, and we will reach out when we have opportunities for you to volunteer. Another way to support us is to connect with us on social media using Facebook, possibly Instagram, and some others. Another way is to create a Facebook fundraiser for us. I cannot recommend enough to sign up for our newsletter because this will help you to be able to stay up to date on some really great things that we have coming up. We would really love to meet you in person at some of our upcoming events. Be sure to always tell a friend about us because really our hope behind all these trainings and things that we offer is to not just support you, but also anyone else who comes behind you and might ask you for help as well. Again, we are just families helping families, and you are now a part of our family. So welcome to the Autism Society of Greater Phoenix family. I hope to see you soon at a future event, and we hope that you have learned some things here today. Please don't hesitate to join us at our live presentation of our Safety 101 because we do go more in detail, and you will have the opportunity to ask us questions live. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Again, our website is phxautism.org, and our general email is info@phxautism.org. We can't wait to hear from you. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope that you found this beneficial, and we hope to see you soon. Thank you.